Hello, my name is Xtina. Welcome to the video. We have two different books today featuring the Deadly Trials trope. We're going to be looking at Powerless by Lauren Roberts and The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. Both of these are fantasy novels about women with undiagnosed oppositional defiant disorder who both must risk their lives in trials which they're unlikely to win because they have far less magical aptitude than their competitors do. And they fall in love with one of their competitors who could totally kill them. But they're also super different. I read Powerless first, and as I was reading it, I was struck by how much it was pulling from the Hunger Games. Like, it was very clearly Hunger Games meets Red Queen. So while I was reading this, it kind of like sent me into a little spiral because like I didn't love it. It wasn't very good. And I was like, am I just a trials hater or is this book bad? So I went on to Google, and some people were like, hey, if you love fantasy trials, you're going to love The Serpent and the Wings of Night. So I was like, great, let's find out if that's true. Before I begin, this video is going to include spoilers, so if that's not your thing, bye. See you later, I guess. We're going to start with Powerless by Lauren Roberts. First of all, cover's cute, huh? It's 526 pages. It's young adult. It's a fantasy romance. It's the first book in a trilogy, plus I think there are some bonus books. It's an easy read. It's a short read. Let's read the description, shall we? She is the very thing he's spent his whole life hunting. He is the very thing she's spent her whole life pretending to be. Only the extraordinary belong in the kingdom of Ilya, the exceptional, the empowered, the elites. The powers these elites have possessed for decades were graciously gifted to them by the plague, though not all were fortunate enough to both survive the sickness and reap the reward. Those born ordinary are just that, ordinary. And when the king decreed that all ordinaries be banished to preserve his elite society, lacking in ability suddenly became a crime, making Peyton Gray a felon by fate and a thief by necessity. Surviving in the slums as an ordinary is no simple task, and Peyton knows this better than most. Having been trained by her father to be keenly observant since she was a child, Peyton poses as a psychic in the crowded city, blending in with the elites as best she can to stay alive and out of trouble. Easier said than done. When Peyton unsuspectingly saves one of Ilya's princes, she finds herself thrown into the purging trials. The brutal competition exists to showcase the elite's powers, the very thing Peyton lacks. If the trials and the opponents don't kill her, the prince she's fighting feelings for certainly will if he discovers what she is. Completely ordinary. So this book is supposed to be an enemies to lovers because of course it is. The description is actually a pretty good summary of the world and the world building. The elites are the people who have magic powers, and it sounds like it should have a class element associated with it, but it doesn't. The description makes it sound like the king recently decided that ordinaries should die, and that actually happened like 50 years ago canonically, so it's not like Peyton was like just sent, underground or into hiding. So I got this book from the library, and I'm sure that I read the description like at some point before I put a hold on it. But by the time that I got it, that information had just completely left my head. So I was left to kind of judgmentally piece it together while reading. That was not a good plan. Got my Bev? Let's get going. So Peyton is our protagonist. She has silver hair. She lives behind a trash heap with her best/only friend, Adina. Adina loves to sew clothes, and so Peyton will often steal fabric for her. Nobody ever describes Peyton this way, but it's like she lives in a trash heap, so I'm pretty sure she's stonky. So her first trauma is that she's an ordinary. Her dad taught her how to be super observant and read people so that she would LARP as a psychic and then she wouldn't be killed. So her second trauma is that her dad is dead. Now, the king himself actually broke into her house to kill her dad. She saw it and she was like, I gotta go. She abandoned the house. She's never been back. Her personality is that she's defiant and stubborn and doesn't want to do what she's told. But she also has a heart of gold. She is one of our two POV characters. The other main characters are the princes. So Ilya's king has two sons, Kit and Kai. So Kit's the firstborn. He'll be king one day, like whatever. Kai is the secondborn, and one day he will be the enforcer, which is kind of like a super cop dude. His power is that he can copy other people's powers as long as they're close enough to him. And he is very much expected to compete in and win the purging trials for like clout, I guess? I don't know. So even though Kai is the prince, his job is that he has to go around to Ilya and kill ordinaries. Like his dad makes him do this. This is terrible, but he's kind of like a one-man SS. And it's sort of amazing that like nobody has killed him yet. I don't know. The more I thought about it, the more I was like, he is like presented as way more redeemable than he really is. He's also the other point of view character, and so we get a glimpse into his heart and his motivations. I don't really recall him being like that super bigoted towards the ordinaries despite everything. So when we meet him, his whole thing is he's going to the slums. He's trying to find this little ordinary girl who's been hidden among this family. And so at first, he exiles the family to the desert, and he's like, they're not going to survive it. It's terrible. It's a fate worse than death. They're going to burn or freeze or starve, whatever. And so he's going to kill the little girl. But then at the last minute, instead of like stabbing her, he like cuts her restraints and he's like, go, be free, be in the desert with your family. I got the impression that this was supposed to be like, oh my gosh, Kai is so merciful. I don't know if that's true. It doesn't seem like the act of kindness that the book kind of wants us to think it is. Anyways, Kai and Peyton's meet cute is that Peyton pickpockets him. Then he gets attacked by this elite called a silencer, which is somebody whose magic lets them basically stop other people's magic. Peyton obviously is not affected, so she saves his life. Everybody's like, it's so cool how you saved the prince. We came up with a new nickname for you. You're the Silver Savior. And we love you so much that we voted for you to participate in the purging trials. You're welcome. The purging trials are our Hunger Games. They're held every 5 years, and elites from both high society and the slums participate, but I think it's more high society than slums. Like this year, it's only like 3 poors competing. And if they win, they get money and glory. That's it. Peyton very much views this as a death sentence, but it's like the purging trials are not like the Hunger Games in that it's not like 10 people enter, 1 person leaves. Like death is on the table, and it's possible, but it's not guaranteed. God, I have a lot of gripes with like just this society, but one of them is that like in Kai's early chapters, he's talking with his like royal aristocratic buddies about the upcoming games, and it just like does not make sense to me that the prince and the aristocracy would be competing in this. Like they have money, they have status. Kai is walking around killing people, so he has a target on his back. But apparently the king of Ilia is just like fine risking one of the heirs to the throne as long as it means that people will pay attention to him. So like I said, they're supposed to win money and status. I don't really know. We never actually like see or hear from any of the winners. There's not even like a throwaway line about how everybody wants to compete and win so that they can be like Chad Thundercock, who won last year's trials and now he's like covered in bitches or whatever. Like that's not even a part of it. So that's basically what you need to know about the trials. Nobody really knows what the trials are going to consist of at this point in the book. Peyton is picked up and taken to the palace alongside 2 other people from the slums. And even though Peyton is very defiant and very stubborn, she doesn't try to run. She just sort of sits there and it pouts and accepts her fate. And she's just like, I'm going to die and I'm not going to enjoy it. So this is very much fantasy Hunger Games, and it does show. Like, we start with an interview portion. We even have our own discount Caesar Flickerman in this woman, Tila. She interviews them and has them, like, show off their powers, and Peyton's, like, shitting herself because she's like, I have nothing to show off. Peyton goes last, obviously. She's sort of the District 12 of this competition. In Peyton's interview, she says her goal is to survive, and that gets a lot of gasps from the crowd, which is stupid because she might not die. They don't know that she's ordinary. Like, she might as well have just been like, I'm okay with losing. Also, nothing comes of this. She's not punished. She's not even like hey, like your interview is bad. Nothing comes of this. Also, Peyton has to do her psychic ruse in front of thousands of people. She doesn't get a single one wrong, and nobody calls bullshit on her. So then she and the other contestants are brought to the palace, and she's kind of like sequestered in her little room where she has time to kind of bathe and wear clean clothes and just kind of chill. Honestly, they probably just make everybody stay in there until like nobody can smell Peyton through the door anymore. So even when she's like in her room, she's not daydreaming about like, what would it be like if she won the trials? You know, could it always be this nice? She's just sort of pouting as if she's going to die. Like she's totally accepted her fate. I thought this was annoying. I guess I kind of wanted her to like want to live a little bit more. Like maybe the room, maybe the bath would be just the carrot on a stick that she needed. The structure of this book is ball, trial, ball, trial, ball, trial. And yes, it is spelled out for us in the book. Peyton remembers that Adina is off living in a trash heap, and she's like, can she actually come be my personal seamstress? She can. Great. Adina sews her a silver gown to wear to the ball, even though all of the other girls wear green. Peyton goes to the ball with Kit because of course he would ask the main character. Then there's an explosion. Everybody's like, it had to be the Ordinaries because there was no magic. We find out that it's by a group called the Rebellion. Can you guess what they do? And some of the rebels escape, which doesn't seem to be a big deal, and also doesn't seem to have repercussions. Like, there is no change in security posture moving forward. Nobody is sharply questioned. Then we get to the first trial, which is the forest. This one is the longest and also most boring by far. There are so many scenes in this book where it's like, I got the point, I've seen the connection, it's cute, whatever. And then I was like ready to move on. And instead, we just kind of linger there. And like, the first trial is so guilty of this. It's so obvious in this trial. So everybody is separated. They have these little armbands that they have to take off of each other, and whoever gets the most wins. Winning doesn't do anything. Don't worry about it. Kai fights another contestant and he gets injured, and then Peyton stumbles upon him, and she makes a little balm for his burns because her dad was a healer, which did not make sense because it's like her dad was a magic healer. He used magic to heal him. Like, what the fuck did he know about balms and poultices and shit? Kai and Peyton decide to partner up for the rest of the trials. This book is supposed to be enemies to lovers. I think at this point, it's been totally forgotten. I don't get the impression that Kai would kill Peyton or even that he wants to. And he doesn't seem to harbor any like deeply held anti-ordinary bigotry. So at this point, it's basically like, my dad would be mad at me if I dated you. That doesn't sell books. So they fight off wolves, they dance, they flirt, they get attacked, they don't die. Ugh, and each of these are like multi-page scenes. This trial lasted 30 years. On the last day, they get a note from a site telling them, you got to make it to the border before dawn or else. And sites are these elites who are basically like, they can kind of like stare at something and record what they're seeing and hearing and then like project it back somehow. They've been running around basically like watching this shit and reporting it the whole time. I don't know if there were like allowed to be on, but like my mental image of this is just so fucking goofy because it's like, I'm going to demonstrate. They get to the end, but then everybody else shows up, including Jax, who is Kai's like adopted cousin brother person. And Kai gets tricked into stabbing him. And then he like realizes it and he's like, oh, and then he like carries him in his arms and he runs to the border in the hopes of tapping into a healer's power and saving Jax. And he does. So at this point, we're like halfway through the book. And I really hoped and thought that Jax would die. Not because of any like feelings towards him as a character, but because it was like, that would tell me how far this book was willing to go. Because it's like Kai being tricked into stabbing him was like kind of fucked up. And I thought like, if he just like did end up dying, like that would be horrible. And that would also kind of indicate to me like how seriously we're taking like death in this book, or even just kind of like who's gonna be safe. So after the trial, they have to watch this recap of everything that happened, including Peyton and Kai's flirting, and apparently everybody loves this. And then when people die, everybody does this little like diamond over their heart thing, which like I guess is like this. I don't really know. So I think somebody told Lauren that she needed the little Hunger Games hand symbol or else she wouldn't get the comp. None of this ever happens again. Later, Kit tells Peyton about how he wants to be a good king. Kit actually seems to genuinely like Peyton, but she sort of feels weird about him because even though he's very nice to her, he's cute, whatever, like he does have his dad's eyes and like his dad's evil. So it's like, oh, murderer eyes. Peyton thinks, I might have judged you too soon. You're not that bad. I'm going to go see what the terrorists who tried to kill you have to say. So way back in the beginning of the book, Peyton pickpocketed this dude in the slums, and he had a paper in his pocket that was just like her old house's address. So obviously Peyton has to go back there and see what's up. So there's a bunch of people there, and they're just like, hey, we're the resistance. You might have heard of us from our recent bombing. They're in her house because her dad was a founding member, and they didn't mean to do the bombing, but now everybody thinks they're terrorists. So was her dad a terrorist then? Ha! No. So these are actually moderate rebels, and all they want is for the king to just admit that the ordinaries are not making everybody else weaker, and that they don't deserve to die. That's it. That's reasonable. And they want Peyton to use her relationship with the princes to find a way into the bowl, which is like this big coliseum where the last trial is going to be held. Peyton doesn't care that this is a group that is so incompetent that they accidentally did terrorism. She's in. Also, this is about the point in the book where any like tension about Peyton being ordinary and being found out is completely dropped. Don't worry about it. Back to the castle. One little terrorist attack is not going to stop us from holding a ball. So the king pulls Peyton aside. He's not happy that Peyton is spending so much time with his beautiful baby boys. So he tells her, you're fucking nothing, you stinky bitch. You will never win. Then the king orders all of them to fight. And so Peyton has to fight Blair. So Blair Blair has been there. She's one of the competitors. She is the daughter of the general. She's a purple-haired bitch with a bone to pick, and she's also in this competition. She really doesn't do much except like exist bitchily, and she is canonically a bitch. Blair's power is telekinesis, and so she throws weapons at Peyton, but Peyton wins anyway. So then we get the second trial, which is mountain climbing. Kai and Peyton are put onto 2 separate teams to climb a mountain. Whoever gets the flag on top of the mountain wins. This trial was also very boring, but it was thankfully very short. So both teams end up getting to the top at the same time. It turns into a melee. Peyton fights this other poor on her team, but then Peyton ends up grabbing the flag, and so she wins. At some point after the trial, Kit has Peyton show her the slums. He's like, a good king would not be afraid to see how the poors live. So he shows her the way through the cool secret tunnel that conveniently the rebels need her to find. Then later at the last fall, Kai and Peyton go off and they talk about their growing feelings for each other. The king also pulls Kai aside and tells him that he's very disappointed in him for spending time with a smelly trash girl who can't even adhere to a simple dress code. Okay, so the last trial is this magic moving maze, and they are told that there is a prisoner in the center of the maze who is guilty of treason, and whoever kills the prisoner wins the entire trials. What was the point of the first 2 then? So this trial starts in Kai's POV, and I kind of thought like, okay, Peyton's going to be the prisoner, and then he's going to get there and he's going to have to decide like, oh my God, do I kill her? No. Instead, Adina is the prisoner. And like, what is her crime? Like making dresses that aren't green? So Peyton and Kai get there first, and they just kind of like hesitate. And then Blair arrives. She doesn't hesitate. She kills Adina. She wins. But before Blair can get her little prize or whatever, the resistance shows up. So Peyton and Kit kind of lock eyes from across the room, and she knows that he knows that she betrayed him. Silencers stop everybody from using their magic as their leader speaks. And he says to the king, he's like, tell everybody you lied about the ordinaries, or I will kill the princes. And Peyton is very surprised because she didn't think they were competent enough to be evil. Kai then kind of struggles with the silencer and then uses the silencer's power against him because the plot needs him to. He also realizes that if there were that many ordinaries around and nobody's been getting weaker this whole time, then that would mean that the anti-ordinary propaganda was just bullshit. And that's all well and good, but I don't recall Kai having any kind of crisis over the fact that he was just killing people for fucking nothing. Peyton's like, I gotta get out of here. But first, she has to go back to her room and she has to get this cool vest that Adina made for her. But she runs into the king and they fight. And the king reveals that he didn't kill Peyton's dad. No, Kai did. It was his first murder. Oh, and also, he knew that she was ordinary this whole time. And he didn't kill her because, and this is the quote, I'm gonna read the quote, then why didn't you kill me, I yell. Because if you knew what I was, then why not kill me like you have with every other ordinary? Because I needed you alive, he says simply. But now you are of no use to me. And since the trials didn't kill you, I get the pleasure of doing that myself. There's no indication that he needed her for anything. And then he does his little evil villain speech because he knows that the ordinaries don't affect the elites. He just doesn't think ordinaries are good enough. Again, I did not remember the description as I read this part. So at this point, I was kind of like, what is his motivation? Why is he doing this? And I was so disappointed when it was just like, oh, they're not good enough for him. Like, okay. And we're so close to the end of this recap, but it's like, I just need to rant. I was like so disappointed by his just like villain motivation. Why wouldn't he want a society full of people who couldn't overthrow him and couldn't fight back? Like there was such an opportunity for there to be this like abused underclass of ordinaries that rises up. Like this world would really lend itself to some sort of caste system because it's like there are definitely elites who are stronger and have better powers than other people. Or even if he just feels like the ordinaries aren't good enough, it's like, could he not do some fucked up shit, like try to infect them with the plague or like breed this like new strain of plague so that they get powers? Could he not do something like that? And it's like, no, he just doesn't like them. So he's going to send his son to kill them. And I was like, oh, fuck off. During their fight, the king gives her a big ol' scar on her chest. And it's a big ol' O for ordinary. Peyton kills him. And she looks up and she sees a sight watching her, just recording the whole thing. Like, but it's not just the sight who sees her. Kai sees her too. Even though Kai saw her kill his dad, he lets her go. And then Kit becomes king, and his first order of business is he's like, Kai, you bring me Peyton. So that was the book. It was not very good, but to be honest, like, I kind of enjoyed it despite that. Like, I mean, I looked forward to reading it every night, and it is a really easy read. Okay, so Peyton. Peyton is supposed to be this, like, super defiant, like, rebellious, stubborn girl, and instead, I felt like she just kind of came off as more, like, standoffish and contrarian, like, maybe bitchy light. I wanted her to go, like, absolutely feral instead of just sitting there like, "I don't wanna do this," or "I'm mad that I have to do this." Kai is fine enough, I guess, but, like, the split POV, like, doesn't really help him because Peyton will talk about how, like, he's so cold and calculating, and then when you get his perspective, like, he really doesn't come off as that, and honestly, his voice doesn't even feel written, like, that differently from Peyton's, and Kai just, like, doesn't make sense to me, right? Because he is kind of like a one-man Gestapo, and it's like, nobody just tries to kill him, like, none of the poor people in the slums or anywhere, like, try to absolutely destroy him in the trials. Peyton, like, forgives him, kind of, for that. I don't think that what she intended for Kai matched up for what she had written for Kai, if that makes sense. Like, I think she thought that it was just kind of like, well, he's being, like, forced into doing this. He doesn't really want to kill them, but they do die because of him. Maybe he atones more in the later books. Then there's the whole thing with his dad, where it's like, his dad is like, you're gonna win the trials, but it's like, there's nothing on the line for him. Like, he's gonna be the enforcer anyway. And when he doesn't win, like, it doesn't matter. And it's like, partially, yeah, because his dad dies, but then it's also because, like, he's not even disappointed in himself. Even after reading this entire book, I did not understand why they had to have the purging trials. It felt very contrived. I didn't feel like it held up to any, like, scrutiny. Like, I feel like it wanted to be compared to the Hunger Games so badly, and it just sort of missed the mark. Because, like, one of the things that makes the Hunger Games so good is that it's like, it says a lot about the Society of Panem, and the trials don't really say anything. In the end, it's supposed to be like, well, the king wants the Ubermensch population, but, like, who's he showing off to? Why? Like, we don't know anything about the rest of this world. And it doesn't seem like anybody outside of Ilia even pays attention to the purging trials. So it's like they just do this for fun. Why couldn't they do an Olympics? And I think they could. I think they could do an Olympics, actually. And so I made this whole chart to prove it. Please take a look. Now, on the x-axis, we see willingness to be there, for which Hunger Games ranks pretty low. And on the y-axis, we see risk of death, for which the Hunger Games ranks pretty high. You will see that Olympics is an option. They could do an Olympics with minimal risk of accidentally creating a succession crisis, and I think the people would love it. And the king could still, you know, be really proud of all, like, his cool little medals that all of his little people won. But they didn't do that. So that was Powerless. I'm not going to read the rest of the trilogy, but if you did, let me know down in the comments if it gets better or if it somehow gets worse. So our next book is The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. This book was way better than Powerless. It was also for adults, so it was more mature. That's not, like, why it was better. Okay, so I do have to warn you before we start. There are a lot of words in this that are hard for a beautiful white girl like me to pronounce, so please be patient, okay? Thank you. All right, here's the description. For humans and vampires, the rules of survival are the same. Never trust, never yield, and always guard your heart. The adopted daughter of the Nightborn Vampire King, Oriah carved her place in a world designed to kill her. Her only chance to become something more than prey is entering the Kajari, a legendary tournament held by the goddess of death herself. But winning won't be easy amongst the most vicious warriors from all three vampire houses. To survive, Oriah is forced to make an alliance with a mysterious rival. Everything about Rain is dangerous. He is a ruthless vampire, an efficient killer, an enemy to her father's crown, and her greatest competition. Yet what terrifies Oriah most of all is that she finds herself oddly drawn to him. But there's no room for compassion in the Kajari. War for the House of Night brews, shattering everything that Oriah thought she knew about her home. And Rain may understand her more than anyone, but their blossoming attraction could be her downfall in a kingdom where nothing is more deadly than love. So it's 504 pages. It's adult, it's fantasy romance. It is the first book in a duology that's part of a 6-book series. I don't think that series is complete, and I haven't read the rest of its books. It's been a while since I read a book about vampires. Vampires did used to be my shit. If you were a teen when Twilight was a big thing, like, you know. This book is also supposed to be enemies to lovers, but Rain and Oriah are more like competitors than true enemies, I feel. At this point, I'm honestly starting to wonder if, like, any romance between people who don't immediately like each other is going to be enemies to lovers. I think that's too generous. And this is also on Kindle Unlimited. That's where I bought it. I need to confess something. And I kind of pretended this wasn't the case before, but I'm coming clean now. I am usually like always going into these things like blind or half blind. I will put books on hold at the library, and by the time they got to me, like I totally forgot. Xtina from months ago picked these out, and she might as well be a totally different person from me. So now we are going to dive right in. So let's take a look at the map. This book is set in the land of Obitres, which has 3 royal courts: House of Night, House of Shadow, and House of Blood. This book is set in the city of Sivranage. We'll see it in the center. So the vampires in this world, they are a little different. There are 2 clans of vampires, Hiaj and Rishan. Hiaj have bat wings and Rishan have feathery wings. They both have magic. So the Rishan used to be the clan in charge of the House of Night. But 200 years ago, this vampire Vincent won the Kajari, and he used his wish to seal away the power of the Rishan and take over. Because of that, he is the strongest Hiaj vampire, and he has an air mark, which is kind of this like magic tattoo thing that shows that he's the ruler of all of the Hiaj. So there are still Rishan, and they are allegedly rebels. Vincent is trying his damnedest to kill them all. So I feel like there is kind of a spectrum of vampires in books where it's like you've got kind of like the softer vampires, like the more like emotional, broody vampires, and the more like evil vampires. And I feel like these definitely lean more towards like the evil vampires. Like they're power hungry and bloodthirsty. You can be turned into a vampire, but you can also be born as a vampire. And so because of that, like it's not uncommon for vampire parents to like cripple their children or kill their siblings just to like consolidate power within their family. Our main character, as we read, is Oriah. She is the adopted human daughter of Vincent, the king of the court of night. She is also stubborn and defiant and defensive. But this made sense to me because she is a human surrounded by vampires. Like all the vampires are predators. They could kill her at any time. And she has been training for years so that she can hold her own against them. So years ago, Vincent found Oriah in Rishan territory in a city called Solinet. She does not know if her original family is alive or dead, or who they are, or even if they're looking for her. But her goal is that she wants to become a vampire so that she can return to Solinet and find them. She doesn't feel like she can do this as a human. Vincent is very clear that like she's not strong enough to do this. So she enters the Kajari, which is this contest held every 100 years. And if she wins, Nyaxia, who is the goddess of death and the goddess of vampires, will grant her wish to become Vincent's Coriatai. This will make her a vampire without having to be turned, because in this world, being turned into a vampire only has like a 1 in 3 success rate. It would also bind her soul and power to Vincent's. So the Kajari consists of 5 different trials held 3 weeks apart. Contestants come from all 3 of the vampire kingdoms, and they have to stay in the Moon Palace, which is this magical palace that only Kajari participants can enter. It's also super creepy. Like the floor is made of bones and teeth, and like rooms and towers and staircases move around, but not in a Hogwarts way, more of like a teleporty way. So Oriah is the only human contestant. So participants don't know anything about what the trials are going to consist of, but the 3rd trial does always require them to have like a partner or a group. Also, it's like kind of funny because it's like the Kajari can start at any time, and the way that they find out is they just get like teleported into the Moon Palace. And so Oriah does. She gets teleported into the palace, and she's like, all right, I will be going solo, thank you. She explores, she finds this greenhouse. She's like, perfect, that's going to get a lot of sun. I will be very safe there. But she also encounters Rain pretty quickly on because he keeps her from saving a group of humans that are being devoured by vampires. Oriah competes in the 1st trial, which is called the Full Moon Trial. All of the contestants are put in groups and they get attacked by demons. Rain actually is in her group for this, but they don't really interact. So afterwards, Oriah meets Rain and his friend Misha. They're both turned vampires, and they still remember what it was like to be human. So Rain is a Rishan vampire with dark hair and black wings. He is like this huge, hulking man with a big sword, and he still has a lot of sympathy for humans, and he's a lot more personable than other vampires. Misha, though, is even more personable than him. She is sweet and friendly and bubbly, and we find out that she used to be a priestess of the sun god before she was turned. Even like Oriah is like, wow, this is like the most human vampire I've ever seen. So Oriah, Rain, and Misha team up and train together because the 3rd trial again requires them to compete as a team. And Oriah moves into a room in their tower so that they can train together. And she didn't want to do this, okay? She didn't want to cooperate. That's the stubborn girl way. Trial 2 is the waning moon trial. There's this maze that they have to complete. And in it, Oriah finds this little human girl and she's like, I'm going to save her. Everybody's like, I'm dumb, but like, whatever, she does it. Oriah and Rain will also bond by going out into the human districts in town. Oriah's thing is like when she gets mad, she likes to walk around and like stake vampires who prey on humans. And Rain likes to drink shitty beer and kind of reminisce on what it was like to be a person. But when they get back, there's been an attack on the Moon Palace. Part of it's destroyed, there are demons attacking, and also there's like this special fire called Night Fire, which only the Nightborn use, and that's like burned a lot of the palace, including Misha. So Misha is critically injured. Oriah and Rain ask the goddess, I think through like this dude, the Minister, who is her priest, they ask her for permission for Misha to drop out of the tournament, and the goddess is like, no. Then Rain and the other Rishon vampires are brought to the House of Night Palace. So Oriah's been kind of like on and off meeting up with Vincent throughout this whole thing. Like he's been kind of giving her like potions and whatever. And she is like, please do not torture Rain. He is my partner. Like I need him alive. And also like Misha really needs to be allowed to drop out. And he's like, oh, why? And she's like, well, she's too weak. And then she kind of thinks like, what would this guy buy? And she's like, she's too weak. She'll hold us back. And he's like, okay, well, kill her. And then obviously Oriah's not going to do that. Also throughout this whole thing, Vincent seems like really distracted, and we kind of get clues that tension within Sivranage is kind of rising. So Oriah's like, fuck this. She goes to the Minister and she offers him some of her blood in exchange for Misha to be permitted to leave the competition. So Rain comes back and he's been tortured pretty badly. Like his back is just like whipped to shit. This was the thing that Oriah specifically requested not happen, and so she has to stitch him up before their trial. Then at the Half Moon trial, Rain and Oriah have to drink this weird potion where it's like they can see what their partner sees and they can feel what they feel and they can think what they think. And in this weird state, they have to like battle the other competitors while also like racing to this special gate. Also throughout this whole thing, like Oriah has magic, but it hasn't been super reliable. But when she sees Rain getting his ass absolutely kicked, like it just comes out and she's like shooting night fire everywhere. And when she succeeds, like Oriah looks into the stands and Vincent is watching and he is like sobbing. After the trial, Oriah and Rain fly away to go visit Misha. She's healing, she's doing much better. And then when they come back, there are 3 weeks until the Crescent Moon trial. Oriah, Rain, and the other competitors find that they've been trapped in the palace with no more blood or food to sustain them. So eventually Rain does run out of his little like blood that he had stored, and Oriah kicks him out because like, what if he accidentally eats her? And at this point, we kind of have this like, our partnership might be over thing where they kind of like look longingly at each other, like whatever. Then the Crescent Moon trial begins and all of the competitors are dropped into the forest. Immediately, Oriah sees animals in the forest and she sees vampires feeding on them. And when they like pull back, they're all fucked up. And she realizes like, oh, the animals are drugged. She's like, I gotta find Rain. She finds him, she helps him fend off an attacker. And then she's like, you can't eat the animals, but you can eat me. And then he feeds on her blood hornily and sensually to completion. Then they have to like fly through this cloud of like magic poison gas where they stop every now and then. And they have to like take breaks by landing in this like sandy ruin area. And Oriah and Rain finally realize like this isn't just like ruins. This is the ruins of Salome. Oriah and Rain realize that Vincent's army has completely leveled this city of 500,000 people. At this point, there's like 2 other competitors. They all realize this and they're all sort of like, what the fuck? And after they complete the trial, Oriah like rushes to Vincent's palace and she calls him out for destroying Salome. And she's like, what the fuck? You knew you were going to do that, okay? And you didn't tell me. And you knew that I wanted to go find my family. And now they're all fucking dead probably because of you. In this scene, like Vincent kind of switches between like there's kind of like her dad Vincent, which is like kind of more sympathetic to her, more fatherly, and he's kind of sorry for what he did even though he won't say it. And then there's also King Vincent, who is this like brutal, vicious person who is like, we are at war, honey. Like, damn right I was going to level them. And when Oriah returns to the Moon Palace, she learns that the last trial will actually be taking place tomorrow. Oriah and Rain end up spending the night together. They have pages and pages of sex. So Rain also tells her about how he became a vampire and how he was turned and like what he's been doing in the last like 70 years. He's actually visited all of the vampire kingdoms, which is not super common. Most people don't really do that. He also tells him about like the guy who turned him was this terrible, abusive, horrible dude. So then Orion accidentally reveals to Rain that if she wins, she plans to become Vincent's choreotai. And Rain freaks out because he's like, that is a terrible fucking idea. He's like, that will make you weaker. Like, do you get that that will make you weaker? Like, that only benefits him. He's like, Vincent must have an ulterior motive. But Oria's like, I don't really know enough to say. And then the next morning, it's time for the new moon trial, the final trial. Each contestant is put into the arena in a little enclosure where they have to fight 3 like reanimated corpses of fallen contestants who have been dressed up and are like acting in such a way to like mimic like the 12 gods of Obitres. In the end, it comes down to Orion, Rain, and this other contestant, Angelica, who is a bloodborne vampire. Angelica is like only targeting Orion, which is like kind of weird, right? But Orion ends up killing her. So then it's down to Orion and Rain. And as they fight, she realizes like she loves him. He loves her. And they fight valiantly, but Orion ends up pinning him. And she has her knife at his heart. And she doesn't want to kill him. But then, like, he kind of forces her to stake him. And he dies. And Nyaxia comes down and she is like, Orion, my girl, you've won. Congrats. And Orion is just weeping. And Nyaxia loves this because she loves when her little vampire babies are fighting. Throughout this, Orion is just thinking about, like, she's like, I know I'm so human. I'm so weak. Like, being human is my weakness, but I can't help it. This is who I am. And so then instead of wishing to become Vincent's choreotai, she wishes that Rain would have won the competition instead. And I love this, actually. Like, this was very deeply vulnerable from Orion. I got the impression reading it that, like, everybody thought it was really dumb. Like, everybody's watching and they're just like, oh, girl, you could have anything and you picked that. Even like Nyaxia kind of seems to think like, oh, wrong wish, girl, but like she's not gonna stop her. So Nyaxia grants the wish. Rain comes back to life and Nyaxia goes over and she's like, congrats, boy. And so he makes his wish. So 200 years ago, when Vincent won the Kajari, his wish involved sealing away the Rishon magic. And Rain is like, I would like it unsealed, please. And so the magic is unsealed, and Rain is revealed to be the Rishon heir. We kind of have some clues of this because, like, the tips of his wings are red, as are Vincent's. We know that that is an heir mark, but it's not super called out with him. He also has this huge burn scar on the back of his back, and that's actually where his heir mark was, and he tried to burn it off. So the magic is unsealed, and his first order of business is that he is going to fuck up the Hiyaj, and especially Vincent. And he destroys Vincent easily. Like, he like liquefies this man. And as Vincent is dying, Orion goes to him. She still loves her crazy vampire daddy. And he's like, there was so much more I wanted to tell you. I wish I'd told you sooner. But he doesn't tell her then. And then he dies. At this point in the book, Orion is pretty pissed at her dad. But she had like very complicated feelings towards him. Yes, he lied to her. Yes, he constantly lies to her. Yes, he fucked her over. But he's still her dad. Like, she still loves him. And after Vincent dies, the Hiyaj heir mark appears on Orion. She is the Hiyaj heir. She's stunned. She has been completely stunned into silence. And Rain is like showboating to the crowd. And he's like, I'm going to marry and rape her the way that they've metaphorically raped us. I think it was a metaphor. I hope it was a metaphor. And I was like 80% sure that he was showboating at this point because like he does come off as like genuinely friendly and genuinely affectionate with her earlier in the book. But it's like all of this comes out of nowhere for Orion. And so there's this sense of like, who the fuck is this guy? It is like a huge 180 to the Rain we saw before this. Later, Orion is in the palace, and she has learned a lot since then. Rain was termed by the previous Rishon king. And so because of that, he didn't think that he would be the heir when that king died because he was turned, but I guess it was enough that he counted. Silvernor's were teeming with bloodborne vampires, so Rain actually had to ally with the bloodborne in order to make his plan work. But he was really hoping that he like would not have to go through on the deal. So like when Orion was on top of him, he was like, kill me, girl. Don't make me do this. Wow, Orion really did fuck up everything with her wish. And then Orion learns that she's actually Vincent's real daughter and that she is half vampire. Rain kind of suspected this because he did drink her blood. And so he did know that she tasted like a little different. Then Rain and Orion have to get married Rain's like, this is so that I can protect you. Oria's like, bullshit. I hate this. I hate you. And as they're doing their marriage vows, there's one vow that's like, I bind my heart to you. She's just like, I can't fucking say it. So Rain's like, okay, just don't make her say it. Don't make her say it. And after he leaves, Oriah finds that some people in Vincent's court might actually be loyal to her as his heir. And so then, we kind of get the seeds planted for some scheming that might happen in book 2. And that's it. That's the book. I really liked this. And by the time that we reached the decimation of Solanae, like, I was locked in. Like I said, it's a duology that's part of a series. I haven't read the next part, but I'm really excited to. Other thoughts. Vincent. Yes, Vincent. Oh my gosh. So I read this directly after Powerless, right? And especially compared to him, like, I loved Vincent as a villain. Like, he was truly ruthless. Like, at one point, they leave the Moon Palace after a trial, and there are literally, like, Rishon wings that have been, like, ripped off of people, just pinned to the Colosseum. Like, it is fucking brutal. This guy is a monster. Oriah is his weakness. If he wanted her to die, like, she would be dead. Like, she would have been dead a long time ago. And so I thought there was something kind of sweet about that. This guy is, like, a fucking evil, ruthless king, but, like, he genuinely loves his very vulnerable daughter in his own fucked up way. So that was The Serpent and the Wings of Night. I really enjoyed it. Go check it out. Final thoughts. The trials in The Serpent and the Wings of Night were much better, obviously. Like, the scenes themselves were better written. There wasn't too much filler. I think it also helped that the trials in Serpent are working hard to move the plot along. When you think about, like, the Hunger Games, right? Like, the trials in the Hunger Games are plot-driven, they're meaning-driven. And, like, in some ways, it's like, yeah, you could argue that the Kajari is a celebration of ruthlessness in this world that values power above all else. And then there's, like, something you could say about how, like, what kind of person enters the Kajari? What kind of person would throw themselves in a den of wolves simply to become their equal? But ultimately, like, the Kajari is about moving the plot along. It's about moving the plot along. It's about keeping Oriah out of the loop when she needs to be. And, like, they're very satisfyingly actiony. In Powerless, the trials are more of a setting. Like, now we're in the forest. Now we're on a mountain. Now we're in a maze. Now we're fighting and, like, whatever. Like, they are stops on the train instead of the engine that is driving the train. Choo-choo. Like that. As I was reflecting on trials, I think it's probably pretty easy for trials to become contrived. And I think that's definitely the trap that Powerless fell into. Maybe you're an author, okay? And you have this idea for a character or a world or a magic system or whatever, but you don't really know how to put it all together. And so then it's kind of like trials are an easy fix for that, right? Because it's like now suddenly your character has something to do. They have to compete. They have a goal, which is to win or survive. And they have a conflict in other contestants for the trials themselves. And you get a built-in comp of the Hunger Games. Suddenly your book can be Hunger Games meets whatever. Truthfully, I do think this is what happened with Powerless. Obviously, I was not a fly on the wall when that book was written. That's kind of how it feels to me. And that's that. Did you read any of these books? Let me know down in the comments if you did, if you have thoughts. If you don't have thoughts, type whatever's on your mind. And if you enjoyed this, go ahead and give it a like, subscribe, or even just send it to somebody that you think would like it. It would mean the world to me while I'm starting out. Okay, bye.